My name is Sarah Sterling. I am 28 years old, and until 48 minutes ago, I was the heir apparent to the Sterling hospitality empire. Now I was a trespasser in the very building where I learned to walk. Please, Sarah, don't make a scene, the voice came through the intercom. It was smooth, detached, and infuriatingly calm. It belonged to Marcus, my stepbrother. Mother is already distressed enough with the funeral arrangements. We don't need your hysterics. I live here, Marcus, I said, pressing the button, my voice trembling despite my best efforts to channel my father's steel. My apartment is on the 12th floor. All my things are there. Open the door. Correction, Marcus replied, and I could hear the smirk he wasn't bothering to hide. Employees live here. Guests live here. You are neither. Your employment was terminated effective immediately upon the reading of the estate intent, and since you voluntarily disclaimed your inheritance, you have no reason to be on the premises. I stared at the brass intercom plate, seeing my distorted reflection in the wet metal. I didn't disclaim anything. Open the door, or I'm calling security. I am security now, Sarah. Your bags are at the service entrance. Don't come back. The line went dead. I stood there for a long time, the rain matting my hair to my forehead. I looked up at the towering brick facade of the Sterling Grand. 12 stories of history, built by my great-grandfather, saved from bankruptcy by my father, and managed by me for the last 6 years. I walked to the service entrance around the back, past the dumpsters that smelled of wet cardboard and stale coffee. There, sitting in the mud, were 3 garbage bags. One had ripped open, spilling my clothes, my silk blouses, my running shoes, a framed photo of my father and me fishing on Lake Union, onto the dirty concrete. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I knelt in the mud, gathered my things, and felt something cold and hard settle in the pit of my stomach. My father, Robert Sterling, had died of a sudden aneurysm 4 days ago. And his wife, Lydia, along with her son Marcus, hadn't wasted a single hour. If you're reading this, you probably think you know how this goes. The poor little rich girl loses her fortune and learns the value of hard work. But I already knew the value of hard work. I was the one who unclogged the toilets in Suite 404 when housekeeping was short. I was the one who balanced the ledgers at 3 a.m. I was the one my father trusted. What I didn't know was that my father had expected this. He knew exactly who he had married. And from the grave, Robert Sterling was about to teach Lydia and Marcus a lesson they would never forget. To understand the betrayal, you have to understand the dynamic. My father was a man of ledgers and handshakes. He married Lydia 10 years ago, a time when he was lonely and she was charming. Lydia was a former interior designer who treated people like furniture, useful if they fit her aesthetic, disposable if they didn't. Marcus was her son from a previous marriage, a man who thought wearing a suit made him a businessman. My father tolerated them. He loved me. The hotel is a living thing, Sarah, he told me once. We were in his office, the one that smelled of mahogany and pipe tobacco. I was 12. It breathes. It has a pulse. If you don't listen to it, it will die. Lydia, she only sees the paint. You see the pipes. He was right. I started working at the front desk the summer I turned 16. By 25, I was the director of operations. Marcus, meanwhile, was given the title of brand ambassador, which mostly meant he took clients to expensive lunches and charged it to the company account. The tension was always there, simmering. Lydia would make comments at dinner. Sarah, don't you think you work too hard? You'll ruin your skin. Why don't you let Marcus handle the vendors? My father would just sip his wine and wink at me. Sarah handles the vendors because the vendors respect her, Lydia. But Dad was old school. He didn't believe in digital backups for the most important things. He kept a physical journal, a black leather-bound book he carried everywhere. The Black Book, we called it. It had every secret the hotel held: codes, safe combinations, personal favors owed by city council members. When he died, the Black Book vanished. And then came the meeting. 3 days after the funeral, Lydia summoned me to the conference room. Their family lawyer, a man named Mr. Blight who looked like a vulture in a bespoke suit, slid a piece of paper across the mahogany table. "This is a disclaimer of interest," Blight said. "Signed by you, Sarah, 6 months ago. It states that in the event of your father's passing, you voluntarily waive all rights to the Sterling estate and the hotel ownership in exchange for a lump sum payment of $50,000, which was deposited into an account in your name." I picked up the paper. It was on sterling letterhead. The signature at the bottom was mine. The loop of the S, the sharp cross of the T. It was perfect. "I never signed this," I said, looking at Lydia. She was wearing black, but her pearls were bright enough to blind. "You were going through a difficult time, dear," Lydia sighed, dabbing a dry eye with a lace handkerchief. "You told your father you didn't want the burden. You wanted to travel. You wanted to be free." "That's a lie. I was running the renovation project 6 months ago. I was here every day." "The document is notarized," Marcus added, leaning back in my father's chair. It made my blood boil to see him sitting there. "August 14th. See the stamp? It's ironclad, sis. You took the money. You can't double dip." "I didn't take any money." "Check your old savings account," Blight said smoothly. "The transfer record is there." I pulled out my phone, my hands shaking. I logged into an old credit union account I hadn't used since college. There it was, a deposit of $50,000 on August 15th, labeled settlement. "I didn't authorize this," I whispered. "You signed the paper," Marcus said, standing up. "We're just honoring your wishes. Now, since you're no longer an owner or an employee, we need your badge and your keys." That was how I ended up in the rain. They had planned this for months, maybe years. They forged my signature, moved money into a dormant account I wouldn't notice, and waited for my father to die. I dragged my garbage bags to a Motel 6 3 miles away. I paid for a week with my credit card, praying it wouldn't be declined. I sat on the bed, which smelled of bleach and stale cigarettes, and stared at the water stains on the ceiling. I had no job, no home. My reputation in the city was about to be shredded. Lydia would make sure everyone knew I was unstable and had abandoned the family legacy. I needed a job. The Sterling Grand was the only reference I had, and now they would say I was fired for cause. I applied to every luxury hotel in Seattle. The Fairmont, the Four Seasons, the W. Doors closed. "We heard about your breakdown," one manager told me, pity in his eyes. "Lydia Sterling called us personally. She's very concerned about your mental health." Lydia was thorough. She was burning the bridge while I was still standing on it. 2 weeks later, I was desperate. My savings were draining fast. I walked into the Anchor Inn, a 2-star hotel near the port. It was the kind of place where truckers slept for a few hours, and tourists who booked the wrong thing ended up crying in the lobby. The owner, a gruff man named Mr. Liu, looked at my resume. Then he looked at my suit, which was wrinkled but clearly expensive. "Sterling Grand," he grunted. "Why you here? You steal silver?" "No," I said, meeting his eyes. "My family stole the hotel from me. I need a job. I know the front desk system. I can handle maintenance tickets. I can clean. I just need a paycheck." Mr. Liu stared at me for a long moment. Then he tossed a polyester vest onto the counter. It was bright blue and smelled of industrial detergent. "Night shift, 11 to 7, minimum wage, no trouble." "Thank you," I said. And I meant it. The next 3 months were a blur of exhaustion. I checked in long-haul truckers, broke up fights between drunk sailors, and plunged toilets that hadn't been replaced since 1990. It was humiliating. It was grueling. But it kept me fed. And it kept me invisible. Or so I thought. One Tuesday night at 2 a.m., the lobby door chimed. I looked up from the computer, expecting a late check-in. Instead, Marcus walked in. He was wearing a tuxedo, his tie undone, leaning heavily on a woman I recognized as a local Instagram model. He blinked, squinting at the fluorescent lights, and then his eyes landed on me. He froze, then a slow, cruel smile spread across his face. Well, well, he slurred. Look at this. The Princess of the Sterling Grand, wearing polyester. The woman giggled. This is your sister? The one who ran away? She didn't run away, Marcus said, stumbling toward the counter. She was evicted. Can I get a room? The presidential suite, please. He slammed a black credit card onto the counter. My father's card. The one Dad only used for emergencies. We don't have a presidential suite, Marcus, I said, my voice flat. And you should leave. I want to inspect the competition. He laughed, knocking a display of brochures onto the floor. Come on, Sarah. Get me a room. Or do I need to call your boss and tell him you're rude to customers? He grabbed a handful of mints from the bowl and threw them at me. They hit my chest and scattered on the floor. The woman laughed harder. Pick them up, Marcus commanded, his eyes suddenly hard. That's what you are now, isn't it? The help. Pick them up. I looked at him. I looked at the scattered mints. In the old days, I would have thrown him out. I would have called security. But I needed this $15 an hour. I needed to eat. Slowly, I walked around the counter. I crouched down and began picking up the mints. Good girl, Marcus sneered. He took a photo with his phone. The flash blinded me for a second. Mother will love this. We're selling the hotel, you know, to the Omni Group. They're going to gut it. Turn it into condos. Legacy. Pfft. Cash is king, Sarah. He turned and stumbled out into the night, leaving me on my knees on the linoleum floor. I stayed there for a minute, gripping a peppermint wrapper until my knuckles turned white. They're selling the hotel. My father's life work. The building he loved more than anything. They were going to gut it. I stood up. The shame that had been burning my face cooled into something else, something hard, something distinct. Marcus had made a mistake. He mentioned the date on the fake document, August 14th. He had been so proud of that forgery. I walked back to the computer and opened a new browser tab. I didn't have access to the Sterling Grand servers anymore. Lydia had scrubbed my passwords. But the Anchor Inn used a shared cloud system for reservation management, a cheap third-party software called GuestLog. The Sterling Grand didn't use GuestLog. They used a custom proprietary system. But I remembered something. On August 14th, the day I allegedly signed that document in a notary's office in downtown Seattle at 2 p.m., we had a crisis. Senator Higgins had suffered a heart attack in the lobby. It was chaos. We had to clear the entryway for the paramedics. I was there. I was holding the IV bag because the paramedic slipped. I didn't just remember it. I had to file an incident report, not just internally. We had to file a report with the city because the ambulance blocked a fire hydrant, and there was a citation issued that we had to contest. I opened the City of Seattle Public Records portal. It was public domain. I typed in Sterling Grand Hotel and the date range. It loaded slowly. My heart hammered against my ribs. There it was. Citation number 4492-B, obstruction of emergency access. The appeal document was attached as a PDF. I clicked it. The appeal letter was written by me. But that wasn't enough. A signature on a letter could be challenged. I scrolled down to the evidence attached to the appeal. Exhibit A, security camera. Still, exterior entrance. Timestamp, August 14th, 14:03:12. The image was grainy, black and white. But there I was, standing in the rain, directing the ambulance, clear as day. The forged disclaimer said I was at a law office in Bellevue, 40 minutes away, at 2 p.m. I printed the image. My hand was shaking. This proved the document was fake, but proving it in court would take months, money I didn't have, and Lydia would just claim the time on the notary stamp was a clerical error. She would bribe the notary. She would drag it out until the hotel was sold and gutted. I needed more. I needed the undeniable proof. I needed the black book. But the black book was gone. Or was it? I thought about my father. He was paranoid. He didn't trust clouds. He didn't trust banks. He trusted walls. The hotel breathed, Sarah. When we renovated the lobby in 2018, Dad insisted on keeping the original concierge desk, a massive oak monstrosity bolted to the floor. He said it was the heart of the room. I remembered watching him one late night. He was fiddling with the brass railing at the foot of the desk. I thought he was just polishing it. You see the pipes? I looked at the clock. 4 a.m. My shift ended at 7. The sale of the hotel, the closing gala, was scheduled for this Friday. Marcus had bragged about it on Instagram, a black tie event to sign the papers with the Omni Group. I had 3 days. The next morning, I didn't go to sleep. I put on my best remaining suit, the one I'd saved from the mud. I went to the downtown library and printed everything: the citation, the photo, the transfer records of the $50,000. Then I called the only person I could trust, Mr. Henderson. He wasn't a lawyer. He was the head of maintenance at the Sterling Grand for 30 years. Lydia had fired him 2 days after Dad died, replacing him with a cheap contracting service. Sarah? His voice was gravelly. I heard they kicked you out. I'm so sorry. Mr. Henderson, I need to get into the hotel, tonight. Sarah, they have new security, cameras everywhere, biometric locks on the back doors. I don't need the back door, I need the tunnels. There was a silence. The Sterling Grand was built on top of old Prohibition-era smuggling tunnels that ran to the waterfront. They were sealed off in the 50s. Or so everyone thought. Dad and Mr. Henderson kept one clear for structural access. It's dangerous, Sarah. There's rats. Water. They're selling it, Jim. They're selling it to Omni on Friday. They're going to gut it. A pause, then the sound of keys jingling. Meet me at the Pike Place loading dock at midnight. Bring a flashlight. The tunnels were a nightmare, cold, wet, and smelling of rot. We crawled for 20 minutes, the damp seeping into my jeans. Mr. Henderson moved surprisingly fast for a man of 70. We came up through a maintenance hatch in the sub-basement laundry room. The hum of the industrial dryers covered our noise. Where are we going? Henderson whispered. The lobby, I said, the concierge desk. It's 2 a.m. There's security in the lobby. Shift change is at 2:15. The guard does a perimeter walk. We have a 3-minute window. We crept up the service elevator. I watched the numbers tick up. B2, B1, L. The doors opened. The lobby was dim, lit only by the amber glow of the chandeliers on the dimmer setting. It was beautiful. It hurt to look at it. Go, Henderson hissed. I ran across the marble floor, my sneakers squeaking softly. I reached the massive oak concierge desk. I dropped to my knees. I found the brass rail, the third spindle from the left. I twisted it. It didn't move. Panic. Had I imagined it? Was Dad just polishing it? Sarah, hurry, Henderson whispered from the elevator. I closed my eyes. The hotel breathes. I didn't just twist it. I had to push down, then twist. Click. A small panel in the base of the desk popped open. It was tiny, barely big enough for a hand. I reached in. My fingers brushed against cool leather. I pulled it out. The black book. But underneath it there was something else. A thick cream envelope, sealed with wax. On the front, in Dad's sprawling handwriting, for Sarah, in case of wolves. I shoved both into my jacket. Got it! We ran back to the elevator just as the flashlight beam of a security guard swept across the front doors. Back in my motel room, at 4 a.m., I opened the envelope. Inside was a USB drive and a handwritten letter. My dearest Sarah, if you are reading this, I am gone, and Lydia has shown her teeth. I hoped I was wrong about her. I hoped she would be content with the trust fund I set aside for her. But greed is a hole that has no bottom. You probably think I was blind to Marcus's ambition and Lydia's maneuvering. I wasn't. I was just tired, but I was never too tired to protect you. The disclaimer of inheritance she likely produced is a fraud. I suspect she used the blank letterhead I noticed missing from my office 3 months ago. She has been practicing your signature. I found pages of it in the recycling bin. On this USB drive is a video recording I made in Mr. Henderson's presence last year. It is my last will and testament. It supersedes everything else. It leaves the hotel to you, 100%. Lydia gets the beach house and a stipend, provided she does not contest the will. If she contests, she gets nothing. But there is more. The Black Book contains the ledger of renovations that Lydia billed to the hotel for her personal design firm, fake invoices, shell companies. She has been siphoning money for 5 years. It constitutes embezzlement. Don't just take the hotel back, Sarah. Clear the rot. Love, Dad. I sat on the edge of the bed and wept. Not from sadness, but from relief. He hadn't abandoned me. He had armed me. Friday night, the grand gala. The ballroom of the Sterling Grand was transformed. Crystal centerpieces, champagne towers, a live orchestra playing generic jazz. The elite of Seattle were there. The executives from Omni Group, men in gray suits with predatory smiles, were shaking hands with Lydia. Lydia looked triumphant. She wore a red gown that screamed victory. Marcus was holding court at the bar, laughing loudly. I walked in through the main doors. I wasn't wearing a gown. I was wearing my Sterling Grand management suit, navy blue, perfectly tailored, with my gold name tag pinned to the lapel. Sarah Sterling, Director of Operations. The security guard at the door moved to stop me. "Miss, this is a private event." "I'm on the list," I said, not breaking stride. "I'm the owner." The murmur started slowly, rippling through the room. Heads turned. The click of heels on the marble floor was the only sound as the orchestra trailed off, sensing the tension. Lydia saw me. Her face went pale, then red. She marched over, her champagne glass sloshing. "How dare you!" she hissed, loud enough for the nearby tables to hear. "Security! Get this trespasser out of here!" Marcus rushed over. "You have some nerve, Sarah, coming here to beg for scraps?" "I'm not here to beg," I said, my voice projecting to the back of the room. I walked onto the low stage where the microphone stood. "Turn that off!" Lydia shrieked at the sound technician. But the technician was an old friend of mine, Dave. He just crossed his arms and left the mic live. "Good evening," I said. My voice boomed through the ballroom. The Omni executives looked confused. Mr. Blight, the lawyer, looked terrified. "I apologize for the interruption. My name is Sarah Sterling, and I am here to prevent a crime." "She's mentally unstable," Lydia shouted, trying to climb the stairs to the stage. "She disowned the family! Get her out!" "Actually," I said, pulling the papers from my portfolio, "I have proof that the disclaimer of interest my stepmother presented was a forgery." I held up the enlarged photo of me with the ambulance. On August 14th at 2 p.m., when I was allegedly in Bellevue signing away my birthright, I was right here, saving Senator Higgins's life. This is the city citation timestamped to the second. A gasp went through the room. Senator Higgins himself was actually in the audience. He stood up. "She's right. I remember her holding my hand." Lydia froze. That proves nothing. Timestamps can be faked." "Maybe," I said, "but this can't." I held up the USB drive. "This is my father's video will, recorded and notarized by Mr. James Henderson and filed with the State Attorney General's office this morning. I uploaded it 3 hours ago." I signaled Dave. The projection screen behind the stage lowered. The promotional video for Omni Group cut out. My father's face appeared on the giant screen. He looked tired, but sharp. "I, Robert Sterling, being of sound mind." The room was dead silent. Lydia stood at the bottom of the stairs, looking like a statue of horror. Marcus was trying to sneak toward the exit. The video played out. The specific exclusion of Lydia from the hotel ownership. The condition that she gets nothing if she contests. When the video ended, the silence stretched for a heartbeat, then shattered. "But that's not all," I said into the microphone. I looked directly at the Omni executives. "Gentlemen, I wouldn't sign that sale contract if I were you. The seller doesn't own the property, and furthermore, The assets you're buying have been severely devalued by embezzlement. I held up the black book. This ledger details 5 years of fraudulent invoices paid to Lydia Sterling Interiors for work that was never done. $3 million stolen from the operating budget. Lydia lunged. She actually lunged at me. Give me that! Security intercepted her. Not the new security. My security. The old guards who had heard what was happening and showed up. It's over, Lydia, I said. I didn't yell. I didn't gloat. I just felt an immense, exhausting weight lift off my shoulders. Mr. Blight, the lawyer, was already on his phone, presumably calling his own lawyer. Marcus had been stopped at the door by 2 police officers I had called an hour ago. The Omni executives stood up, buttoned their jackets, and walked out without a word. The deal was dead. Lydia was escorted out, screaming that I was an ungrateful brat, that she had given me everything. I watched her go. I felt nothing for her, no hate, just pity. The room cleared out slowly. The guests whispered, staring at me with new respect. Or fear. It didn't matter. I walked down the steps. Mr. Henderson was waiting by the bar with a glass of whiskey, Dad's brand. "You did good, kid," he said. "We did good," I corrected. The aftermath was messy, as these things always are. Lydia and Marcus were charged with fraud and embezzlement. It turned out the forgery was sloppy. The notary flipped on them immediately to save his own skin. They lost everything. The beach house, the cars, the status. Last I heard, they moved to Arizona. I didn't sell the hotel. I spent the next 2 years fixing the damage they had done. I rehired the old staff. I tore down the tacky drapes Lydia had installed. But the biggest change was the culture. I kept my job at the Anchor Inn for 1 more week, just to work out my notice. I wanted to leave the right way. Mr. Liu actually smiled when I left. He framed my resignation letter. Now, every new manager at the Sterling Grand has to work a week in housekeeping and a week in the laundry. They need to know the pipes. I'm sitting in my father's office now. The black book is on the desk. It's raining outside, tapping against the glass. I open the book to a fresh page. Entry 1. Ownership is not a title. It is an act of service. I sign it. Sarah Sterling. My family tried to erase me. They tried to rewrite history because they thought power came from a signature on a piece of paper. They didn't understand that you can't steal a home from the person who built the foundation. My father prepared the weapon, but I had to pull the trigger. And I'd do it again. If you're reading this, and you feel like the walls are closing in on you, like the people who should love you are the ones holding the knife, remember this. Document everything. Trust your gut. And never, ever underestimate the power of knowing where the bodies are buried. Are you watching the pipes, or are you just looking at the paint?